Hi everybody, this is Todd Creager. Today's subject that I want to talk about is 3 habits to practice self-love when you're in a relationship. Now, of course, self-love is important, and I've talked a lot in other areas about self-compassion, mindful self-compassion, the importance of self-compassion. But today I'm really specifically talking about self-compassion when you're in a relationship, because relationships sometimes make it difficult. You would think it makes it easier for self-compassion, especially if you're in a wonderfully loving relationship, and that maybe in some ways it does. But I think that there are some challenges in in continuing to be self-compassionate when you're in a relationship, because we have the needs of the other person, because we have a tendency oftentimes to define our worth by other people. And then when you're in a relationship, especially as it becomes more meaningful, you might give that person more power to decide you're okay. And I think we also have a tendency to want to look good in a relationship. So those factors have a lot to do with what I want to talk to you about today. So let's go for it. 3 habits to help you practice self-love when you're in a relationship. The first thing you want to practice is being the sun and not the moon. That's right, being the sun and not the moon. What do I mean by that? Well, the moon, it has no light of its own, and it needs the sun to reflect its light so that it could shine. And I think a lot of people act like the moon. In other words, they're letting others define their worth too, their worth. And they let other people define that they're good enough or not good enough. And that's a big mistake, because the truth is you are the sun. You are not the moon. In other words, only you and you alone decide that you are worthy or not. All the time, it is always only you. And it doesn't feel that way, because when we're in a relationship, it seems like the other person is the one with the power. But we are the ones that permit people to define our worth. It is us. We have to find our own choices. We have to find our own power, I should say. And once we find it, we start to realize that it's never the other person. If somebody speaks poorly to me, about me, whether it's to my face or behind my back, it is me and only me that decides what that really means. Does it mean that I'm not worthy? Well, if I decide it means that, because that person thinks I'm not or puts me down in some way, then I'm the one deciding I'm not worthy. If it means that maybe I do have a flaw, which we'll talk about a little later, then that means I might have a flaw that I got to work on. Doesn't mean I'm not worthy. Or it might mean that that other person's just projecting their own stuff onto me. But in any of those situations, it is me and me alone that decides whether I'm worthy or not worthy. You are the sun. Every time you feel bad about yourself, look at your own inner critic. Typically, when we are hard on ourselves to one degree or another, when the partner or the other person is saying things that put us down, it's literally resonating with that inner critic. And that's what makes us feel bad. That is what makes us feel bad. If somebody says to me, I can't stand your disgustingly green hair, as you could tell, whatever hair I have is not green. And so it would not resonate with me, because I know I don't have green hair. So it wouldn't bother me. But if a person says to me something that on some level I may unconsciously or consciously agree to, then I'll feel bad. And it's me making that decision. So you are the sun. You can decide, and you may have to decide this over and over again, that you are worthy, that you can shine your own light. If somebody has negative feedback towards you, still shine your light. You're still worthy. And if you don't feel worthy at that moment, just know that you have unconsciously possibly decided that you're not the other person. That's a very difficult lesson for us, because we get born into this world little. And so we rely on other people so much for our own definition. But sooner than later, what we want to do is recognize and wake up to the fact that it's only our permission that lets others make us feel bad, that they dictate our self-worth. We are not the moon, we are the sun. The second tip is to make room for yourself in the relationship. One of the blocks to self-love oftentimes is when we're in a relationship that we adapt. Now, it's important to adapt and it's important to compromise. I'm not saying you shouldn't compromise. I'm not saying you shouldn't adapt. I'm not saying you shouldn't have love and compassion for other people. But what I'm saying is that sometimes in relationships, we tend to overly adapt to make peace. I like peace, but I don't like it at the expense of not making room for ourselves. It's important to be visible in a relationship. It really, really is. And we need a healthy dose of what I call selfishness, a healthy selfishness. Self-absorption is not okay, because self-absorption means I'm not thinking about you, I'm only thinking about me. But self-expression, healthy selfishness, and going along with that is being willing to disappoint or frustrate your partner. Doesn't mean you want to or that you plan to, but you have to be willing to. All those things, self-expression, healthy selfishness, and correspondingly a willingness to frustrate and you disappoint your partner sometimes, gives you the path to make room for yourself. When you make room for yourself, when you can take up space, that is when you can experience your own self-love in a relationship. And I could tell you this too, that even though it's not specifically the subject of this talk, that I've said many, many times that the biggest aphrodisiac in a long-term relationship is the sense that I could be more and more of who I am. So not only does it help you experience continual self-love, self-acceptance, self-fulfillment, but it really makes you like your partner more. When you could be in a relationship where you could be yourself. And if you practice self-expression, and you practice what I call healthy selfishness, and sometimes that might mean frustrating or disappointing a partner, and then that partner says, no way, I'm not willing to accept that, it may be the wrong partner. Again, I'm not saying that you should never yield or compromise, but it's got to be a choice. It's always got to be a choice. When we choose to compromise, it's very different than giving in. We got to make room for ourselves. So that's very, very important in a relationship, to experience and practice self-love. Okay, so I just want to repeat one more time: self-expression, healthy selfishness, being willing to frustrate and disappoint your partner at times, because it's important for you, and truly it's important for him or her, the relationship you're in. And the third thing is you need to accept your faults and be vulnerable in a relationship. You know, the more you are open and transparent and honest and share your feelings and your fears and your flaws, as well as all your wonderful aspects, it's basically giving yourself a message of self-acceptance and I'm okay. The more we hide flaws or hide things that might upset the other person. Again, it's related to what I just said about willing to frustrate the other person, maybe, or disappoint the other person. But it's another lens in which to look at this. If you keep hiding it, it actually leads to shame. You know, the more we hide, the more we have shame. The more we're open and upfront and honest about our vulnerabilities, our flaws, our wants, our desires, all those things that may make us feel a little emotionally naked and vulnerable. The more we do that, we're also giving a message to ourselves: I am okay. I accept myself unconditionally. I do. And again, you can see how these three things run together, because if you're doing that, you are acting like you're the sun. You know, that you matter, and you're also acting like you're worth being visible and taking up space. So being honest, being open, letting a person in on things that, like if you're in an intimate relationship, maybe a good question to ask yourself is, what would be something that I would tend to avoid saying because I don't want to be judged? Say that thing. You pick the right time, you know, whatever it is. But ultimately, you want to be practicing being open and transparent. So those are the three things. Again, you are the sun, not the moon. You need to make room for yourself in the relationship. And you need to be open and honest and not hide, especially your flaws as well as your wishes and desires. If you practice those three tips, I will tell you that your relationship becomes one more important arena in your life where you can practice self-love and feel a high self-regard and self-esteem. It's really important. This is Todd Creager, making the world safe for love.